So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to now begin our today's program. Thank you and welcome for joining us this morning. The winters are beginning to set in Delhi. It's a cold, chilly winter morning, and we thank you all for joining us this early. And good morning, namaskar. It is the 6th edition of the FICCI Circular Economy Symposium 2022. The theme for our today's program is, of course, accelerating circular economy for sustainable and inclusive growth. That's what we are going to be talking about and elaborating over the next 2 days. We welcome you on behalf of FICCI and all of our supporters and partners who've helped us bring this program to you. And we are going to begin with the opening session, or the inaugural session, where I'd like you to put your hands together and join me in welcoming, first of all, Dr. Michael Bucke, Counselor and Head of Section Sustainable Modernization Delegation of the European Union to India. We thank you for joining us this morning. I'm going to request Shri M.A. Patil, Assistant Secretary General, FICCI, to also, in fact, escort our other guests to the dais. We are joined here this morning by Mr. Janardhanan Ramanajulu, Vice President of Regional Head, South Asia and Australia at SABIC. We have with us Dr. Naresh Tyagi this morning, co-chair of the FICCI National CE Committee and Chief Sustainability Officer at Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail Limited. Mr. Amit Sinha, chair of FICCI National CE Committee and President Group Strategy at Mahindra & Mahindra. Then we are also joined by Mr. Sandeep Singh, Managing Director, Accenture Strategy and Consulting. And of course, Mr. M.A. Patil, Assistant Secretary General of FICCI. We were expecting Mr. Amitabh Kant, G20 Sherpa, Government of India, but unfortunately, because of some last-minute engagements, he couldn't join us. But of course, he will be joining us virtually. We shall hear from him in a virtual session during the session. I am going to request all of our dignitaries to please take a seat, and thank you this morning thank you for joining us this morning. We'd like to extend our heartiest welcome to our dignitaries here. I'm going to first of all request Mr. Amit Sinha to kindly welcome Dr. Michael Bucke with a green certificate, which is a part of FICCI tradition, a green welcome and a certificate that basically says that trees have been planted in your honor, sir. Dr. Michael Bucke, thank you for joining us at our program. And I'll request Dr. Naresh Tyagi to present a green certificate to Mr. Janardhanan and welcome him to our today's program. And without any ado, I'm going to request Shri M.A. Patil, Assistant Secretary General FICCI, to kindly give the welcome address. Let's all welcome him with a round of applause, please.
A very good morning to all of you. Dr. Michael Bucke, Counselor and Head of Section Sustainable Modernization, Delegation of the European Union to India. Mr. Janardhanan Ramanajulu, Vice President, Regional Head, South Asia and Australia, SABIC. Mr. Amit Sinha, Chair, FICCI National CE Committee and President, Group Strategy, Mahindra & Mahindra. Dr. Naresh Tyagi, Co-Chair, FICCI National CE Committee and Chief Sustainability Officer, Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail Limited. Mr. Sandeep Singh, Managing Director, Accenture Strategy. So I welcome all the dignitaries on the dais. A very warm welcome to the 6th edition of FICCI's flagship event, the Circular Economy Symposium. Today, we are celebrating our 6th anniversary, and this 6th year journey has been a rewarding and enriching experience, not only for us at FICCI, but for our industry members and all the stakeholders who have been part of this expedition. I say this expedition because it is with the active engagement of our esteemed Circular Economy Committee members, and through them, the wider industry and government stakeholders, that we proudly stand here and say that FICCI has been a pioneer in mainstreaming the circular economy agenda in our country. When we started 6 years ago, there was a lot of interest in the subject. Global knowledge was developing and being discussed but local context was missing. Through our series of knowledge papers each year, in partnership with Accenture Strategy, we have invested heavily on building upon the country-specific knowledge base, which is helping not just the industry and government stakeholders, but it is also of immense interest to national and global audience crusading this CE movement. At FICCI, our values are inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, who at our AGM said that the industry should regard themselves as trustees and servants of the poor. This same attitude of wide national interest endure in FICCI. In all our past editions, we have been highlighting recommendations and suggestions to the government, and glad to share that many of the suggestions have been successfully considered and implemented. We are committed to consolidate all suggestions and feedback received through you all during this symposium and submit our recommendations to the policymakers for necessary action. We will also witness presentation and felicitation of awardees of the third edition of National Circular Economy Awards, ICEA, and I am sure that you will listen to some path-breaking innovations and ideas from the winners. FICCI is committed to play its part in establishing the required ecosystem. We intend to continue this effort by catalyzing cross-cutting collaborations and partnerships with government, industry, and multilaterals. I take this opportunity to also share that FICCI, along with Accenture Strategy, as its technical partner, are working closely with Niti Aayog to develop a unified national circularity measurement framework, and had the first industry stakeholder workshops yesterday at Niti Aayog. The initiative is supported by MOEFCC, and it gives me immense pleasure to share that we are also assured of support from EU for this initiative of national importance. FICCI Accenture knowledge paper being released today, positioned as consultation paper to kick off the work in this direction forward, and we look forward to wider participation of stakeholders in this process. So with this, I welcome all the dignitaries on the dais, speakers from both the days, today, tomorrow, and delegates for being part of this event. So I welcome once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patil, for setting the context for our today's program. I'm going to now request Mr. Amit Sinha, Chair of the FICCI National CE Committee and President Group Strategy at Mahindra & Mahindra, to kindly deliver the conference address. Let's welcome him with a round of applause.
Thank you. Morning to you all. Morning? Morning. Okay, good. Let me start with a small story. Have any of you read George Orwell, Shooting the Elephant? Let me just tell you a story to just warm you up to this morning. George Orwell wrote a short essay in 1936 about a topic called shooting the elephant. He was a British police officer posted in Burma, and there was an elephant that had gone mad, out of control that day. And he was destroying property, plants, equipment, and doing a lot of damage to his constituency. So he was the only guy who had a rifle to shoot the elephant. So all the local people came to him and said, hey, you need to help us out. So he got his rifle out and he started walking towards the place where the elephant had done all the damage, to follow the track. As he approached the elephant, by that time the elephant had calmed down, and he was grazing, not destroying anything. But by that time he had done a lot of damage to the property. In fact, he had killed a person as well. But when he arrived, by the time he arrived, there were thousands of people following him. and they expected him to use the gun to shoot the elephant. But the elephant had stopped damaging, and he was totally under control. So he faced a dilemma. Should he shoot the elephant because the people behind him expected him to shoot the elephant and he had done the damage, killed a person? Or should he take a decision based on the current situation that he had calmed down and he could be managed by the mahout who was on the way? It's a very interesting story because many of us face the same dilemma in our daily lives, personally as well as professionally. And circular economy is a topic that makes us wonder, should we go for growth or should we do the right thing for the planet, people, businesses? And that's the reason I thought I'll share the story, because the circular economy is a topic that is of huge importance to us, and there has not been as much discussion as it has been in the last few years on circular economy. So with that opening, I hopefully got your attention. Let me just give you a little bit of my view on why me personally, but also at Mahindra, circular economy is playing a very important role and why all of us are here together. So let me start with a few key messages. From my side, just 4 key messages. Message 1 is about importance of circular economy. All of you know about it, but the challenge that we face is, the dilemma that we face is, how do we get the economic growth, but also manage the resource consumption issue that we all face? And circular economy is a key bridge between growth and resource consumption. If you were to look at some of the recent report, it talks about our resource consumption today is approximately 1.75 times the resources available on Earth today, and we consume that on an annual basis. What that means is circular economy has to play that role, the bridge, that allows us to make it sustainable. Extremely important, right? But the challenge has been, why should we do activities related to sustainability? Why should we do activities related to circular economy? Because now more than ever, the economic rationale is there. The strategic rationale is there. There is more and more sustainability rationale to pursue this opportunity. We at Mahindra have a auto recycling business. Some of you know about it. And we can recycle so much more end-of-life vehicles that we would like to, but the regulatory issues, the policy issue at a state level, some of the operational issues working with the RTOs, they are not resolved. And that's limiting our ability to create the circular economy and create an economic model that allows us to achieve that. But there is a clear reason for us to think about circular economy as a way to bridge between economic growth as well as resource consumption. So extremely important part of doing this right. The second is the size of this opportunity. In the past, circular economy was a nice thing to do, like the initiative under circular economy. Okay, let's do it because it's good for us to talk about, but didn't have a clear business rationale. Now that's getting amplified. Today, some of the studies talk about almost $4 to $5 trillion of opportunity just with circular economy business model. I talked about Mahindra's auto recycling business. It's a very big business in some of the developed countries. $4.5 trillion of circular economy business opportunities getting created in the next 7-10 years. So huge play for all of us. In fact, India can play, given our per capita income is much smaller, given where we are in our development cycle. I think we can take the best practices that already exist. We can leapfrog and pursue those opportunities in an aggressive way. Only 9% of our resources around the world are recycled. 9%. 91% is scattered, doesn't get reused, doesn't get recycled, doesn't get back into the mainstream. So there is significant opportunity for us to bring that back into the mainstream economy. There was a study by another foundation which talked about just 5 sectors. So steel, aluminum, food, plastic, and cement. If you were to get circular economy efforts going in these 5 sectors, by 2050, we would be able to reduce our GHG emissions by 40%. So huge amount of implication if we were to get the circular economy right. So that's my message too, that hey, while circular economy has been in the discussion, but now more than ever, there is a clear economic rational business opportunity that is getting created, and we must tap into how we pursue each one of them. Message number 3 is, given what has happened due to pandemic, the war in Europe, the window of opportunity is short, but we have to understand the urgency of moving forward. Everybody is talking about it. Even COP27, the last couple of you've seen so many big announcements. There have been commitments by developed countries to support these transitions on the sustainability front, supporting some of the circular economy initiatives. But the key gap is the flow of knowledge, the flow of technology, right? Many of the developed countries have a lot of knowledge, a lot of technology that needs to be brought to developing economies. And I think within the developing economies itself, we have the opportunity to learn from each other. All of you bring a wealth of knowledge, which is not shared, which is not mainstream. And I'm hoping that this today and tomorrow you are able to participate and share and contribute to each other's knowledge. And message number 4 is how FICCI has played a critical role in the last few years. This forum has become a mainstream forum. They've been active on the circular economy from 2018 and played a very important role in getting all of us together, all the private sector, government sector together to support many of these initiatives. In fact, the report that Accenture has done has been mainstream. Last year report was very well received. In fact, I recall one of the observation was 77% of the business leaders actually are keen to see how circular economy can improve the decarbonization goal that they have for the businesses. So it's an outstanding effort. Some of the work that you're doing, in fact, you had a workshop with Niti Aayog yesterday, and I think one of you will give the details of that outstanding engagement with Niti Aayog to see how public and private partnership can actually make some of these things happen. The knowledge that we all have is critical to share. And that's why I'm hoping that all of you can contribute. You'll also hear some of the best practices. The jury has been very active in terms of identifying some of the companies that have done really well. I'm hoping that those learnings can also be shared. So in all, great 2 days ahead for all of us, and I'm hoping that we'll not only learn from each other, but also contribute in a meaningful way. But we take learning back to our organizations and companies to bring a lot more action to make circular economy a reality for all of us. So with that, good luck for the next 2 days. I'm glad to be here, and I hope to learn a lot from all of you, and I look forward to seeing you in smaller forums. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for talking to us, Mr. Sinha. It's time for me to now invite Dr. Naresh Tyagi, co-chair of the FICCI National CE Committee and Chief Sustainability Officer at Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail Limited, to present the theme address.
Good morning to everyone. Thank you, Mr. Patil and Mr. Sinha, for setting the context for the symposium today. My take on that, if I talk about that sustainability and circularity, though it is new word, but we as India are practicing it since long. Sustainability, what we practice is that it's a ability to sustain, not for today, but for tomorrow. So how as a business, how as a corporate citizen, how as an individual or professional, we make a practice which is sustainable not only to this generation, but for next generation. Then other thing, circularity, though it's buzzword everywhere now, but we have been using circularity since ages. I still remember fond memory of my childhood when our shirt and garment was used by all siblings, and it has been used for the maximum time. It has been used, reuse, recycle, even repair to have maximum uses, and that is called sustainable consumption. Even that garment goes for that last level of uses when we use it as a wiper or pocha in our own. And then later on that is further used for upcycling or recycling, whatever best way possible. So we as a Indian in our philosophy has been following that circularity since long, but now how we take that practice which has been missed in, I think, in era of industrialization, how we take it to that, and I will give my perspective on that. Once again, thanks Mr. Patil and Mr. Sinha. You nicely set the context. The circular economy, it's the new paradigm that emphasizes on eliminating waste and providing greater opportunity for the optimal use of resources in the manufacturing process and in end use. If we follow this practice, it is way to move to that circular economy. And to do all these things, I am happy that FICCI has taken this initiative to bring all that stakeholder together for collaboration and getting that guidance of Niti Aayog to enable and build the ecosystem, how we can engage startup, innovators, researchers, industries, NGOs, to have something which can be taken as a business model from linear to circular activity. And this is going to help because this is part of a PMO agenda, how to make India as a Atmanirbhar Bharat and a vocal for local theme. So I think this is what need of ours when we need to put our effort and make it a circular business model as an industry ecosystem for sustainable and inclusive growth. I personally thanks FICCI for doing great work and taking this big theme for Indian context. Some of the point which I see is very important for circular economy, because we have seen that global economy has primarily relied on that intertwined supply chain and unsustainable natural resource consumption for the decade. When we struggle with all these climate change and waste management, it's our manufacturing and use, what we have seen in that last 1 decade is weakness that we go with unsustainable model of consumption. But it has that one way of brighter side, and how that's importance of ecology, sustainable development and redevelopment of natural socio-economic system that is now boosting for that green economy. And due to this awareness on that sustainable practice and green economy, circular economy has lot of potential. It can replace that what we say that use and throw model of natural resources to have new business model and opportunity, how we use optimal way of natural resources with maximum use and make it a business model that has positive impact on the planet and society both. My own definition of circular economy is an industry and business model in which resources and product stay in use as long as possible before being recycled into new product or service. And this come on that key pillar what I have learned from that lot of global forum and best practice, that any product which can be used for the maximum with high quality, durability and longevity, that is the first part of circularity. Second is that the product and service design that is made to be remade, it can be remade and recycled multiple times. That product design is also very important. And third thing is that how you make that product with that renewable material, renewable sources, process that goes for that maximum use and recycling and upcycling. And to do all these things, industry need that ecosystem and supply chain that imbibe and manage this whole supply chain in a manner when it goes for that sustainable and circular model. So it's our role, how we see that digital shift we have seen in last couple of decades, how we intertwine this digital technology into that circular economy and business model to create a product and service that become very easy for the customer, because customer awareness and orientation is also very important to adopt this new practice and new behavior of consuming product in a much more sustainable way. And this not only aligned to that business potential, but it's also very important to achieve the sustainable development goal, which we have adopted in country with transforming the world. It has been recognized by government, industries, policymaker, and all stakeholders, how it is possible to use sustainability and circularity for SDG goal. Our theme today, that inclusive and sustainable growth, refer to that industrial advancement, economic growth, diversification into socially inclusive and environmentally sound and sustainable practice. With this vision, industrialization should not only evaluate based on growth in terms of revenue, but there is a lot of potential to map it with efficient use of resources, level of emission reduction, and generation of high quality green job must be considered along with that revenue growth in this sustainable growth. Along with promoting resource and decoupling and efficiency, the circular economy contribute to inclusive and sustainable growth in several ways. Even the industry I come for textile and retail value chain, majority of vendor, supplier and stakeholder is MSME. So how we bring that MSME into system to create that industry ecosystem for circular business model is also very, very important. Our central theme, we will see that in next 2 days, today and tomorrow, many concepts which will give us deeper understanding to implement some of these practices for the circular economy and business model. For example, to do all these things, you need that circular investment and green financing. Business transformation towards circular economy will need new and innovative financial instrument and investment for regenerated business model. Hence, it is important to see how this investor and sustainable finance is available for circular economy and newer technology. Similarly, session on that circular economy to achieve net zero target, it's India ambition 45% emission reduction of our GDP target by 2030 and long-term goal of net zero by 2070 make it imperative to see the economic growth with CSG emission reduction, product reuse, recycle, material recirculation and waste elimination. There is nothing called waste, it's our inefficiency in manufacturing system or consumption. So that waste, what we call, is something resource which we have to optimize for that CO2 emission as well as for our maximum use for that product and services. Again, that circular measurement framework will give us overview of the existing framework, what are being followed globally, and it will have that adaptability and relevance, what we can make as a unified standard and framework for Indian relevance and Indian industry. FICCI has taken that initiative under the aegis of Niti Aayog with support of Accenture to unify that framework which is easy to understand and which can be implemented and deployed by Indian industries and ecosystem. Digitization is also one of the key enabler for circular economy, how AI and machine learning can be used for traceability, product labeling. So we'll learn that some of the practice of technology enabling, which will help and facilitate circular economy in this way. And finally, there is a transition which is happening in circular economy. It is estimated to create more than 90 million jobs if we do that circular economy, linear to circular transition in business model. It will help to reduce CSG emission, and it will give benefit of multi-billion by 2050 if we adopt this transition from linear to circular economy and business model. Will end here with my thought. It's an industry-wide shift from linear to circular business model is the need of our, and we shall witness huge stride by government and corporate in this direction. I request all stakeholder and sustainability evangelists to join hand for a collective action, because it's not only that as a professional what we work, but as a citizen, how we consume the product and service in sustainable manner is also our responsibility. With that, thank you very much, and have a nice 2 days seminar.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tyagi. And with that, I'd like to now invite Dr. Michael Buki, Counselor and Head of Section Sustainable Modernization Delegation of the European Union of India, for a very special address. Let's all give him a big hand and welcome him.
Thank you very much, Madam, Mr. Sinha, Mr. Patil, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, friends from India, from GIZ, and from our member states. It's a real pleasure to be with you. I'm in the precarious position to give a speech I drafted for my ambassador, His Excellency Astuto, Ambassador of the European Union. He's unwell today, but he had the pleasure to attend and open the 5th Symposium last year. And so I'd like first to thank to start with heartfelt thanks for FICCI, to FICCI for their sustained engagement to circular economy and resource efficiency. This morning I was greeted not only with a very nice token of 5 trees, which hits very close to my heart, because first, I'm a forester by training, and second, I'm just waiting for my 5th kid to be born. So it will be a wonderful token for them as well. So thank you so much for that. But also, I was treated introduced as representing European Union, and as such a guru for circular economy. And I just wanted to observe that actually the gurus of circular economy in Europe are not only the Mahatma, but also Indian present days people like Ashok Kochla or Pavan Sukhdev, who have inspired this philosophy of frugality and efficiency to a number of EU policies. So it's as the Honorable Minister of Finance herself put it in her speech for the Union budget, it is truly a shared philosophy that circular economy can play a role as an enabler to boost productivity, to save costs, to save energy and greenhouse gas emission, to save pollution, to create new and better business and jobs. We really have that in common, this philosophy. However, circular economy is more than a philosophy. It must be a practice. To borrow your words, we all agree that we need to to spare the elephant. And the question is, how do you put the elephant to work? And in Europe, it doesn't look so much as taming an elephant. It's more like herding cats. It's going in all directions. And how you put the elephant to work, how you circular economy pans out in practice in different national circumstances, I must say, as half inside India, half outside, it's fascinating to see how it takes a different shape and flavor under different national circumstances. I think Mr. Patil mentioned already those local circumstances, those local contexts that needs to be taken in account. First, of course, these are different stages in the economy, and also the importance of the informal sector in India, and how that transition to circularity must be consistent with lifting people out of poverty and making the economy more organized. So as this half outsider, half insider, I would like you to allow me and pick two seemingly unrelated documents that recently mentioned circular economy to surprising length. The first one is the G20 communique. Given the geopolitical circumstances, the war in Ukraine and the tensions, it was surprising to see such an emphasis on environmental issues and circular economy in particular. And I would stick my neck out and suggest that maybe it's related to the fact that what one can reuse, remanufacture, or recycle locally, what doesn't need to import. So there is a certain dimension in the context that we have today that we need to limit harmful foreign dependencies, and the best way to do so is actually to have those resources at hand. The second document that I wanted to mention is Indian. It's the Standardization National Action Plan from the Bureau of Indian Standards that shows, that illustrates an inherent tension between developing standards that are fit for the national circumstances, for the local context and the local companies, and at the same time participating in a global discourse and a regional discourse on standardization, so that whatever is produced in India, the processes and the goods, they can be traded with the region and with the world. And I think that's a very interesting angle for us as the EU. We deeply feel we can learn from each other, and that fruitful exchanges of best practices and of new technologies between the EU and Indian business communities can accelerate circularity in many sectors in India and in Europe. I'm thinking of metals, vehicles, precious e-waste, and critical raw materials in particular. If we anticipate that we will have thousands and thousands of electric buses and electric cars made in India in the future, we must also anticipate that we will need a lot of lithium, and we will need a lot of batteries to be eventually recycled, and vehicles to be remanufactured. So I think there is a lot we can learn in that context, because we face similar challenges. This year, in addition to resuming negotiations on a free trade agreement between EU and India, the President of the European Commission also launched a Trade and Technology Council between EU and India. And both the FTA and the TTC, Trade and Technology Council, they could, in principle, help EU and India to co-develop and adapt greener technologies and machines required for the more efficient design, production, use, reuse, and recycling of goods. And these two tools, in itself, they hold considerable potential to save emissions, to save resources, to protect biodiversity and natural resources. But beyond just this bilateral relation between EU and India, more efficient digital business models can strengthen domestic capacities and deliver sustainability solutions for the global south. So it's also a trilateral cooperation type of thinking, that if we manage to make sustainability affordable in India, then we have a product that we can also export together to the rest of the world and all the emerging economies. When we say those things, people tend to think of very high tech, like very high chemistry or quantum computing. I don't think so. I really think a number of practices in EU and in India that may be public domain are just unknown, and that just this dialogue and realization that certain things can be done in different manners in different parts of the world in itself has a huge potential for cross-fertilization. what it needs to happen is that the companies are given milestones, a predictable course that they can stick to while developing their business plans, and it requires also that the workers are equipped with the skills that they will need in the future. And that's why we really welcome Niti Aayog's circular economy committees and this upcoming national circular economy measurement framework that FICCI is developing. We look forward to India taking stock of the parallel progress across those various sectors and then roll out an overarching economy-wide umbrella for circularity, a policy framework, a comprehensive policy framework. We did the same 4 years ago. We developed our own circular economy framework. I'm sure our colleagues in GIZ will say a word. And of course, we are looking forward to this cross-fertilization also at the political level and learn from the way you will develop your own measurement framework. That's all for me. I want to tell you again, I'm looking forward to the discussions today. We really see it as a two-way street. We have been inspired by the Indian wisdom in developing those concepts, and now we are looking to how they are implemented and learning for ourselves. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Bukhi, for that very comprehensive address. We thank you once again for talking to all of us here. And now to present the industry perspective, I'll request Mr. Janardhanan Ramanajulu, Vice President, Regional Head, South Asia and Australia with SABIC. Please welcome him with a round of applause.
Good morning, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you all for coming, because circular economy is a very heavy subject to digest at 10, 11 in the morning. And that shows, like many of you are passionate to be here for this topic, and I'm passionate on this topic too. Just to remind, FICCI started way back calling it life cycle analysis. In 2018, we turned it into circular economy. So we have been associated with this topic because for all of you to know, circular economy is very important foundational step for Sustainable Development Goals 2030 of United Nations, carbon neutrality, climate goals, and it's one of the foundational steps. And I come from the chemical industry. Chemical industry is almost enabler of 9 or 10 out of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Somebody needs to work for all of you to deliver, and that 50% of that has to come from chemical industry. So this is where I think, the industry has a role, not just to do things which is right, but also to enable others to do what is right for them too. Circular economy is working fine. I mean, sounds controversial because the word economy works on economic principles: demand, supply, profit, loss, return on investment, return on innovation. So if you want to see, gold is recycled in India. Absolutely fine. Don't believe the word wastage there. Yeah, you go down the line, copper, steel, aluminium, paper is recycled in India. In fact, India imports waste paper to process them. This is one of the largest importers of waste paper in the world. Whatever is surplus in other countries, we import. Then we go to plastics. Much of plastics, more than 90% thick products are all recycled. And the PET bottles are recycled into your polyester fabric and pillows. Including, we can even do chemical recycling and turn it into another molecule, what is called as polybutylene terephthalate, PBT for short. So this is well established. Chemistry, science is all well established. Economics is well established, and it works. When you go to the tail end of the unit value of recovery, countries like India, we left it to poverty to solve. The thinnest parts, the cheapest parts, we left somebody would pick it up to find the value in that. And then we did not create the reverse value chain which we need to. So all the innovation works taking products to the bottom of the pyramid. By the way, India has 3 rupees, which Michael, this is about 3-4 cents or 5 cents, biscuits to the remotest part of the country. That's a value chain which can take it back. Now that packaging which is unwrapped has to come back. So what are we doing as a country? I think, we were lacking. We have to admit that as a country. And the Prime Minister Modi started it first because you need a foundational step again. Swachh Bharat, though it sounds like hygiene, is a foundational step for you to start becoming clean and start separating your waste. So that's a foundational step which was started almost 7 years ago. And what did that lead to? You had big cities and corporations in Gurgaon and Delhi, the waste segregation at the point of origin started. Because you need to first start that step. We cannot talk about how we can use it. If you don't collect it, you don't, because some of these products, post-consumer waste, do not have unit value. You need to accumulate them to find value in that. So that step needs started. I have to admit, it is taking time, but we are working through quite successfully in big cities. You go outside 25, 30 kilometers outside of Delhi and Gurgaon, people don't even know what is separation and segregation. So we have miles to cover for the rest of this country, but we have started somewhere, and I am happy to say that we should not stop with big cities. We have to find ways. Why? Rural areas have something even more to be circulated. The biomass, we have millions of tons of biomass which is not circulated. Farm waste, like poultry, or cattle waste, they can release huge amounts of methane. We all have the technology, we have established it, but there is no innovation money, there is no brains, there is no intelligence, there is no business model which is reaching them. We leave it to their basic poverty levels or income levels to handle it. So if we drive our funding, our innovation, our efforts, because they are not going to invest on those. We have to find a way to help them to start, and then the reverse supply chain can be fixed. So the behavioral approach of Swachh Bharat was the first topic, and how the corporations and municipalities are important, the second part of it. Then comes the regulatory impact. I don't blame the regulators. When nothing is in control, we will have those bans. You can argue about how scientific some of these are, but the fact is, the ban is the first step to put some sense. I can easily tell you, I have seen even in my own family, the minute plastic shopping bags are banned, now you can see families folding a shopping bag and preserving it. It didn't happen 10 years ago. It was too cheap to be just thrown away. Now you see people preciously, try to put that in perspective. But is that the solution? It's not a long-term good solution. This is just to shock people and to bring them into senses. We need to truly value those products to be able to circulate. The next one is, of course, the government has put mandatory recycled content into your products, into your packaging. Now, initially, of course, it will be a kind of a certification transfers which will be happening, but eventually that will lead to finding material to do this recycled content, and that should help the supply chain. But this is top-down, regulatory kind of an approach. It will take time, but it is more effective, but it puts the entire onus on the elephant. But the community is much, much bigger, and socially responsible citizen can easily help expedite and make it inclusive too. I like that word very much, the inclusive growth there. I'm going to come pretty close. And then what happened, corporates are put with this ESG goals, of reporting, because, we need to now make sure that we are reporting what we do. The regulatory component, another component of it is, of course, extended producer responsibility. So this is the stream which comes from the regulatory approach, and corporates are coping with that. Right now, we are only coping with that. I'm honestly admitting nobody is able to jump that and then take it to the next step. We wish there are technologies, but that's where it stands. I'm going to say now, how do we put this reverse value chains, which starts at the bottom of the pyramid, in place? There are no easy solutions. I can only make some suggestions, and to the policymakers of this country, is that first and foremost, companies in India are mandated to spend part of their money CSR of those profits. And we are doing more or less exactly what the government needs to do in many cases. Hospital, health, this is government's job. But who is going to do this environmental role? So I would say that needs to be recognized. Any money spent towards the circular economy, recycling, it addresses poverty, it addresses the environment. This is a great formula if one accepts it. Some 30 to 40,000 crores of corporate profits are being pumped back into corporate social responsibility, which is a minuscule of what the government is spending anyway into their own social causes. But we need to get this in. Secondly, we are talking about government's approaches to increase capacity, become an export hub, manufacturing is encouraged, production-linked incentives. These need not only be for new products. this can also include the circular economy, plastic recycling, pyrolysis capacities. We should get them into the policy makers' attention to recognize that while we grow, like growth versus sustainability is the topic. Growth versus sustainability is not the topic. We can do both together. And if you fund the PLI incentives which the government is thinking towards this reverse value chain, this is a way to quicken and accelerate what we can do. I come almost to the last part is, of course, we all have a role, not only to educate ourselves, our employees, our colleagues, but the policy makers, that science has to be the basis for decision making. Because in knee-jerk reactions, we'll jump from one to another, which could be even more, in a regulatory approach, more harmful in the long run. So we have to finally put the underlining factor, it has to be science, has to be the basis. Economics will take care, and we can encourage the bottom of the pyramid to find value by helping them. With that, I stop. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. It's time for me to now invite Mr. Sandeep Singh, Managing Director, Accenture Strategy and Consulting, to make a brief presentation on the knowledge paper on Circularity Measurement Framework.
Thank you. Good morning, dear friends, distinguished guests on the dais. It's a matter of immense pleasure for me to be able to invite you all to the 6th edition of Circular Economy Symposium. I'm also very happy to share that in a short while from now, we'll be launching a theme paper on different approaches to measure circular economy transition in India. And what I intend to do in the next 5 to 6 minutes is really share with you some perspectives in terms of what this paper is all about, give you a sneak peek into what kind of design principles have emerged through multiple consultations that we have been able to conduct in the last 5 to 6 months, and what to expect in terms of the way forward. So I'll quickly spend some time to take you through exactly what this journey has all been about. So this journey actually started in 2016 or 2017 when we partnered with FICCI to create the first circular economy demystification concept paper, which was really very Indianized, which was really going to contextualize what circular economy means in the Indian context. What we found was that yes, globally there is about $4.5 trillion worth of value which one can realize by 2030 in the form of adoption of circular business models. But then we started to turn our attention to the next question. What does that mean for India? And what we found was that out of that $4.5 trillion worth of value, there is almost $500 billion worth of value which can actually be recognized in the Indian context. And that too was a very conservative estimate. Thereafter, in the subsequent years, what we did was we actually deep dived into various sectors. We said that yes, $500 billion worth of opportunity is huge, but this is obviously going to manifest in the form of different industries, different interventions. So exactly what does it mean in the context of, let's say, plastic waste? What does it mean in the context of, let's say, electronic waste? And that's where we dive deeper into some of these very specific contexts. Now, last year, what we did was we said that, yes, it's been about 4 years since this journey started. Let's take a pulse check of where the Indian corporates are with respect to the implementation of circular initiatives. And what we found was interesting. What we found was that, yes, circular is something which is really manifesting in multiple forms. Corporates are doing multiple initiatives in different forms. What is probably not existing as of today is a unified framework which can help them, one, really identify what are the big metrics that they're going to be chasing in the coming few years, and also report upon what is the progress on their circular transition. And that apparent gap really laid the foundation for what we wanted to do in the subsequent section, which is what we are trying to do here. I'll give you a sense of exactly what we found through these consultations. We found that, yes, there is a lot of awareness about multiple circular economy frameworks which exist out there. Almost 97% of the corporates that we talked to were aware of one or the other kind of circular economy frameworks. You know, think about frameworks like GRI 306 waste guidelines, think about CTI, think about Circulytics. So yes, 97% of the organizations were aware of some or the other form of circular measurement frameworks, but that awareness may not necessarily have translated into action which can be monitored and tracked. What we found was that as we move forward, this 97% kind of diminished to about 60% when we asked the corporates what fraction of the corporates have really announced some very specific, objective, measurable commitments towards circular transition. So that 97% became 60%. And still moving ahead, what we found was that there are only about 15 to 20% of the organizations which have actually put in place some targets, which one can go to their websites, to their sustainability reports, and really get a sense of what the circular transition really looks like for that organization. So then we asked ourselves a very simple question that yes, if there is awareness, if there is a lot of intent, there is a lot of philosophical awareness about what circular means, and we take a lot of pride in saying that India has been the strongest proponent of circular economy principles, not just for the last few years, but for several decades, given the kind of fundamentals and the values that we believe in. What is it that really is inhibiting our progress? And what we found was that a lot of corporates told us that there isn't a kind of a standard unified framework which one can leverage and adopt in the Indian context. What you see here on the screen is a lot of such existing frameworks which exist globally. A lot of these have their genesis in Western world. There is a lot of goodness that exists in the form of multiple metrics which are also relevant for India. But then there are a few things which we need to add on top of that to really make it suitable for our purpose. You know, things like the role of MSME, for example, the role of informal sector, for example, the last mile connectivity, for instance, the job creation potential, for example. You know, these are some of the very specific Indian nuances which are slightly more relevant in our context than what may have been the case in the geographies where these frameworks were incubated. And with that awareness, we started to think about exactly what would a framework customized for the Indian context, inspired by what already exists, could really look and feel like. Now, then we started to think about really what is the process to really shape that kind of a framework for the Indian context. And we said that, yes, this is going to be a consultative process. It's going to be something wherein we need to work very closely with the industry. We really need to make sure that this is not something that we are creating in isolation, because at the end of the day, this has to be adopted by the industry. So we have done a lot of consultations. We have done a lot of workshops. We have done a few surveys as well. And what we have come up with is 3 design principles that this paper that's going to be launched shortly is going to talk about. We said the first design principle is that we need to think about what are those foundational KPIs that the corporates need to think about. And for that, what we have done is we have really looked at some of those existing frameworks which already are there out there. There are 2 of them which we found very relevant, Circulytics and CTI. And based on our thorough research of those existing frameworks, we have identified about 28 foundational KPIs which are going to be relevant for the Indian context, regardless of which industry we are talking about. Having said that, we then recognize that yes, there was always a gap which we had identified, which says that we need to really add a few very specific Indianized metrics, which kind of enhance the portfolio of metrics that one could think about. And that's where we started to think about a lot of richness that exists in the form of the regulatory guidelines that have come up. You know, think about plastic waste management rules, or extended producer responsibility rules, or you know, e-waste management rules. There is a lot of thorough research and thought that has gone into really shaping those guidelines. So we looked at those, and on top of the indicators that we derived from those global frameworks, we added a few more. So that laid the foundation for those 28 KPIs. That's the first design principle. The second design principle, we said that on top of those sector agnostic indicators, we really need to bring in very specific sector specific guidelines. And that's where the context for, let's say, a steel industry organization would differ significantly from, let's say, an FMCG player. And for this first theme paper, we have focused on 3 sectors. We looked at the steel sector, we looked at the FMCG sector, and we looked at the automotive sector. And what we have done is, through these multiple consultations, we have brought in a few design principles and guidelines, very specific and nuanced for those particular sectors. And then the third design principle is more about how do you leverage all of these metrics that the organizations are going to measure to really start to think about our progress as a nation at a macro level. Can we start to think about, what is India's circular economy transition? Is there an objective way of measuring and quantifying that? Now, all of what we are doing as a bottoms level thinking at the organizational level, at the MSME level, has to lend itself to be able to aggregate and then give us a view of how is India as a nation progressing on that circular economy transition. And that lays a third design principle that we are going to talk about. Now, in summary, what you can expect to see in this paper is, obviously, as I said, this has been a consultative process. It's a journey. We are not yet there. We are somewhere. We have reached a milestone, an interim milestone, but there is a path to be traveled ahead. What we have right now is a lot of rich guidelines, metrics, design principles, which have been shaped based on inputs from about 40 plus organizations. We have looked at about 12 circular economy frameworks, measurement frameworks that exist globally. We have also looked at 7 plus guidelines, regulatory guidelines, EPR rules, waste management rules, plastic waste management rules, and a few others. And as we discussed a short while back, we also had a consultation workshop yesterday, wherein we had organizations from different sectors really looking through these design principles, sharing their feedback, sharing their suggestions, and we were very happy to see that a lot of their inputs were actually in sync with the thought process that has gone into it so far. As it stands today, what you can expect in the paper, 28 foundational KPIs, sector-specific guidelines for 3 sectors, and a view about how could we start to aggregate that at macro level is what we have already come up with. Going forward, I think this process will continue. This is just the first draft, but a good one, but something that we still need to build upon. So going forward in the next few weeks and months, we are going to continue these consultation processes, really finalize that framework, share the recommendations with Niti Aayog, and then start to think also about how do we adopt it in the industry. We do need some early adopters who can then set up an example or a case study for the others to emulate. So I do hope this framework really paves the path for us to accelerate the adoption of circular models in India and really help us realize that $500 billion worth of value, which is recognizable in the Indian context. Before I wrap up, I just want to thank FICCI, Niti Aayog, EU, and my colleagues from Accenture who have been very actively involved in really shaping this in the last few months, and I'm sure we'll continue to do that in the coming weeks and months. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Singh, for that brief presentation. We will be shortly releasing the knowledge paper on circularity measurement framework. But before that, as promised, we have with us Mr. Amitabh Kant, G20 Sherpa, Government of India, joining us virtually for the keynote address. I'll request our team to please connect him so we can all hear him talk to us.
Mr. Amit Sinha, all the distinguished guests, Dr. Michael Bookie, Mr. Janardhanan Ramanajalu, Dr. Naresh Tyagi, Mr. Manish Singhal, all the distinguished guests. I am truly delighted to be addressing all of you. I would have loved to be personally present. Unfortunately, I'm tied up with some G20 preparations. The long-term low-emission development strategy by India for achieving the climate goals and the need for sustainable production, emphasized in Sustainable Development Goal 12, states that we look at alternative paradigms of production and consumption to achieve sustainable material well-being of society. The government has taken 2 critical measures in this direction. Firstly is the emphasis of the Prime Minister on Mission Life, that is lifestyle for environment, because of his belief that it's not countries which will make a difference, but individual and community behavior which will make a difference. And secondly, the transition to circular economy. The Prime Minister had emphasized lifestyle for environment at COP26, and Mission Life is envisioned as an India-led global mass movement that will nudge individual and collective action to protect and preserve the environment. But Prime Minister has also been emphasizing, and he spoke in his Independence Day address about the need for circular economy. And Niti Aayog worked in 11 identified sectors that were initiated by Niti Aayog. Circular economy is necessary for climate change, and there is a huge amount of cross-sectoral collaboration is critical to facilitate circular economy. Our broad approach has been that we create enabling environment through regulatory and developmental measures, that we involve diverse stakeholders while developing the action plans. We ensure that regulations do not become burdensome, that there are cross-cutting issues which should be identified and resolved, and we promote through business models and startups, and that we create a business model of circular economy. It has to be a part of innovation. It has to be a part of the business model so that everything that we produce becomes an input into another thing that we produce, and therefore there are backward and forward linkages. I'm sure that the FICCI members have been greatly enriched during the course of the deliberations in many of the meetings. The Ministry of Environment and Forest in 2022 had introduced extended producers' responsibility for used tires, batteries, revised rules for e-waste and plastics. The scrapping policy for end of life of vehicles with enabling framework is in place now. There is extended producers' responsibility in several other additional sectors are under finalization. And the Bureau of Indian Standards has developed standards for more than 25 secondary materials. The Jawaharlal Nehru Aluminium Research Development and Design Center has taken forward the work in waste utilization of non-ferrous sector. Oil sector PSEs have been mandated to blend regenerated oil in their lubricants and promote circular economy in used oil sector. And CPCB is, that is the Central Pollution Control Board, is facilitating the EPR compliance through digital platform. A digital platform for registration and EPR compliance for plastic sector was introduced in the current year. And I'm sure that different ministries will take several other initiatives as we move forward. The state governments have also taken several initiatives. Rajasthan has taken steps for developing resource recovery park for recycling of electronic waste. Goa has come up with a circular economy policy with focus on few sectors. A few other sectors are also in the process of developing circular economy policies. As the next step, the promotion of circular economy will be deliberated in the forthcoming high-level meeting of the state chief secretaries, where we'll address all the implementation challenge. The climate change and material use are closely linked. As circular economy strategies ultimately prioritize material value retention and cut excess consumption, they can be extremely effective in cutting greenhouse gas emissions. A circular economy involves avoiding excessive consumption, waste, and use of fossil fuels by leasing, reusing, repairing, and recycling existing materials and products. It offers a systematic response to the crisis by both reducing emissions and increasing resilience to its effects. During COP27 last week, India released its long-term low-emission development strategy. With this release, India joins the select list of less than 60 parties that have submitted their LT-LEDs to UNFCCC. The low-emission development strategy is based on rational utilization of national resources with due regard to energy security. The transitions from fossil fuels will be undertaken in a just, smooth, sustainable, and all-inclusive manner. As a matter of fact, the circular economy action plans developed by the NITI Aayog with respective ministries are part of the long-term low-emission development strategies. Circularity is achieved through implementation and action through a successful and advanced circularity, and this requires metrics to track the transaction. Taking forward the National Guidelines on Responsible Business Conduct Guidelines, SEBI in March 2021 introduced new reporting requirements on environmental, social, and governance parameters called the Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report. There is clear reference of circular economy in the core elements and the essential indicator for reporting based on one of the 9 principles included in NGRBC. To assess the maturity and business impact of CE transactions and the CE transition, there is a need to measure circularity in a way which enables standardization of approach and target setting. I'm happy to acknowledge that based on one of the action points from last year's FICCI Accenture knowledge paper on Beyond Incrementalism, a pulse check on Indian circular transition, FICCI is now closely working with NITI Aayog, European Union, and other industry partners to develop a unified national circularity measurement framework for standardized benchmarking and reporting. The proposed framework is intended for India's circular economy measurement and can be adopted by other emerging economies as well. There's another important development about supporting consumers through right to repair. Multiple issues that undermine the rights of consumers need to be tackled. In a bid to emphasize on lifestyle for environment movement through sustainable consumption, the Department for Consumer Affairs has taken out a significant step for developing an overall framework for the right to repair. And this initiative will check the culture of planned obsolescence and as well as strengthen circular economy. At a higher level of awareness is today present in government institutions and corporates on the benefits of circular economy. During our G20 presidency, we will lay a huge emphasis on providing a thrust to circular economy agenda for developing consensus on key issues. G20 provides opportunities for accelerating circular transition, and FICCI will need to play the effective role in very many deliberations under G20. This circular economy paradigm offers necessitates us to keep evolving so that national and local governments provide direction and enabling conditions. Consumers need to make choices that encourage circularities, and businesses will need to redesign their processes and products from ground up. Transitioning to a fully circular economy within a generation will require urgent and large-scale action from all parts of society. I expect the work of FICCI on measuring India's circular economy transition will interest many more corporates, and with some more work, it will fill the gap that was expressed in last year's survey. I wish you all the success in Circular Economy Symposium 2022, and I look forward to your recommendations, which we'll take forward in G20. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, we thank Shri Amitabh Kant for joining us virtually and talking to all of us here today. And with that, we now move on to our next segment, the release of the FICCI Accenture Knowledge Paper on Approaches for Measuring India's Circular Economy Transition. We'd like to take the opportunity to acknowledge the support and contribution of our knowledge partners, Accenture Strategy, who are associated with us since 2018. We had encouraging feedback of the report released in last symposium. The report would be available on the CES website for everyone to post the symposium, and we are quite hopeful that all of you will find the report being released today equally insightful. I'm going to request all the dignitaries here on the stage to now kindly release the FICCI Accenture Knowledge Paper on Approaches for Measuring India's Circular Transition. Thank you. And with that, we now move on to our next segment, the felicitation ceremony of the much-awaited Indian Circular Economy Awards, curated to identify and reward organizations and individuals in India that have made notable contributions and brought in a change using the circular economy principles. Now, the seeds of these awards were in fact sown back in 2019 during Mr. Amitabh Kant's keynote address, when he in fact called out FICCI to develop a platform to recognize innovation in this space. And today is the third edition, and we of course unfortunately skipped one edition in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We once again heartily acknowledge the hard work and the contribution of our knowledge partner Accenture Strategy to develop the entire process, and for working closely with us in helping us in carrying out objective assessment to the select winners. I'm going to request all of our dignitaries to kindly step down because we have more space in the front to give away these awards. We received applications from across India under 4 categories, namely large enterprises, the SMEs, the not-for-profit, and the startups. A little category there also is the technology disruptors, where we'll be giving some awards. The winners were selected by the jury after comprehensive assessment of all the applications that were received across all the categories. Now, the jury was, of course, chaired by Dr. Mukund Rajan, former Chief Ethics Officer, Tata Sons, and also comprised of Ms. Mridula Ramesh, Sundaram Textiles, and Casper Mayland, Environmental Councillor, the Royal Danish Embassy. And with that, let's now begin with the process of the award felicitation. I'm going to first of all start with the large enterprises category and request firstly Dr. Michael Buki to give the awards in this category. Ladies and gentlemen, the second runner-up in the large enterprises category is Larsen & Toubro Construction Heavy Civil Infrastructure. Let's all welcome Mr. S. Sankara Narayanan, Head of Corporate Center, L&T Heavy Civil Infrastructure. And L&T Construction Heavy Civil Infrastructure has a holistic 360-degree view on sustainability, focusing on conservation of natural resources and induction of alternative and recycled substitutes. They use alternative cementitious material in projects to replace a proportionate amount of cement in construction projects, recycle construction and demolition waste wherever possible, and leverages construction waste to create concrete alternatives for construction of temporary structures. So they were the second runner-up. Now the first runner-up in this category is SKF Engineering and Lubrication India Private Limited, a world-leading manufacturer of bearings, lubrication equipment, etc. They've introduced and implemented SKF recoined oil with double separation technology of recoined oil. Particles and other impurities down to a nano-sized level can be captured and separated from the oil. This enables circular recovery and reuse of oils with all original properties retained. We have Mr. Sumit Mitra, Director Lubrication and Seals Business India and Southeast Asia, receiving the award. And finally, the winner of the large enterprises category, of course, is Dalmia Cement Bharat Limited. Let's all put our hands together for Dalmia Cement Bharat Limited. Dalmia is utilizing waste from iron and steel, petroleum, power industry in its process to reduce carbon footprint of its product. They have integrated sustainability and circularity in their business operations by taking many initiatives, such as committing to the carbon negative by 2040, by consuming 40% of industrial waste as raw material, and they also collect untreated water from the city and use the treated water in cement plant with efficiency of 38% water recycling rate. Dr. Arvind Madhukar Bodhankar there, ED and Chief Risk Officer, receiving the award for Dalmia Cement. Once again, congratulations to all in the large enterprises category. Now moving on to the next category, which is the small and medium enterprises. I'm going to request Mr. Janardhanan to please come forward and give the awards in this category. First, the runner-up, and it is IFP Petro Products Private Limited. Please put your hands together, everybody, for IFP Petro Products Private Limited. The company has worked towards resource efficiency by upcycling used oil into RRBO, curtailing import of such virgin base oil, and which in turn has negated the use of virgin base oil. And the used oil is in fact processed with pre-treatment electronation, dehydration fuel, stripping, short part distillation, and clay treatment to produce grade 1 base oil as per client specifications. We had Mr. Sahil Bhargav, Strategy Head, IFP Petro Products Private Limited, receiving the award. The runner-up in this category is Punjab Renewable Energy Systems Private Limited. Please put your hands together. They are creating village-level entrepreneurs to achieve financial inclusion by panning out the full spectrum of bioenergy sector, from training to market development, and also providing linkages to biomass from fields to farmers, replacing coal and wood. They use technology to convert biomass for steam generation, and this helps in saving on fossil fuels. Commander Gurkirat Singh Sekhon, Executive VP North Zone at Punjab Renewable Energy Systems Private Limited, receiving the runner-up trophy. And now time for the winner in this category, that is the small and medium enterprises. The winner is Hasiru Dala Innovations Private Limited. Please put your hands together, everybody. A for-purpose company achieving inclusive circularity. They've created a circular economy instance for organic wet waste, starting from collection of at-source segregated waste to processing it into 2 climate-friendly products, compressed biogas and organic manure. By working directly with brands such as H&M and Cofresco, they supply fairly traded plastic waste directly to the brand's supply chain. And this is, for example, the PET waste is made into buttons, and LDPE covers are made into garbage bags. They also launched the refill solution for home care products, and along with pad care, they also offer a solution for sanitary waste to be recycled to cellulose and mixed plastic. We had Mr. Shekhar Prabhakar, founder and CEO of Hasiru Dala Innovations, receiving the award, the winners for the SME category. The third category is the startups now, a very important category. And here, the second runner-up, my apologies, is Recart Innovations Private Limited. Recart Innovations Private Limited, a leading PRO working with a vision of managing waste in smart cities with a technology-enabled integrated approach. They have developed a government-linked and brand owners-funded plastic waste circular economy model, which is highly scalable and can be adopted by all the cities in India. Currently, Recart is in 165 cities in 30 states and union territories and working with 200 plus brands in India. Mr. Anurag Tiwari, Director, Recart Innovations Private Limited, and team receiving the award. And now for the runner-up in this category, it is it is WasteLink, and we have Mr. Saket Dave, founder and CEO of WasteLink, who will be here to receive the award. WasteLink was born to help the food industry go circular. Their unique food producer-focused technology platform and service provider provides a single window solution for anything which is food waste. With a zero landfill commitment, they convert food waste into feed, into pharma and fuel. And they're already working with many of the top food brands in India and have created a significant positive impact on their carbon footprint. And now for the winner of the startups category, it is Ace Green Recycling. Mr. Sumit Sachdeva, CEO, Ace Green Recycling. May I call upon Mr. Sachdeva to receive the award. The winners, Ace Green Recycling is a global recycling tech platform with sustainable solutions, deploying proprietary and fully electrified technology. Ace is able to recover over 99% and 98% of battery materials for lead, acid, and lithium-ion batteries, respectively, already deployed at commercial scale. They are turning critical heavy pollution industries to eco-positive initiatives, powering the circular economy of tomorrow, and also making global electrification sustainable. And now for the next category, which is the NGOs or not-for-profit organizations. Now here, we don't have any runner-ups. We have a straight winner, and it is Conserve India. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Ms. Anita Ahuja, founder of Conserve India. Conserve has directed its efforts towards environmental conservation while simultaneously creating socially uplifting conditions by empowering underprivileged individuals with employable opportunities since 1997. And they have, in fact, patented a technology to convert single-use plastic into handmade recycled plastic, also known as HRP, in 2008, which mimics vegan leather and is used to create fashion and home products. And with their continuous efforts, they have been able to upcycle 360 tons of plastic. They have trained 2,800 people in upcycling processes and increased the income of waste pickers by almost 150% and avoided 53,000 kgs of CO2 emissions. A big hand, everybody, for Conserve India. I'll also request Mr. Naresh Tyagi to now give away the award for the next set, which is the Technology Disruptors. And here we once again have a runner-up, and it is AP Chemi Private Limited. Mr. Suhas Dikshit, CEO, AP Chemi, may I request you to please join us. Since 2007, AP Chemi has supplied 47 plastic to oil plants to multinational companies. AP Chemi's R&D has developed several technologies for the purification of contaminated pyrolysis oil, and their patented technologies also reduce the carbon footprint by eliminating the use of chemicals in the purification of contaminated pyrolysis oil. So with that, we now have reached the winner for the Technology Disruptors category, which is the last one. And here the winner is Sparkle Eco Innovations Private Limited. Everybody, please put your hands together for Sparkle Eco Innovations Private Limited. Mr. Chirag Virani, founder, Sparkle Innovation, is here to receive the award. They're producers of biodegradable and home compostable sanitary napkins made with a cellulose-based top sheet, cellulose-based absorbent core, home compostable back film, and a wrapper, bio-based adhesives and non-toxic adhesive. These pads are plastic and chemical-free, and their focus is on sustainability and product design from procurement to end of life, and have 8 dedicated departments for R&D to focus on sustainable procurement. So with that, our heartiest congratulations to all the winners here. Let's all have a big, big round of applause for all of them. And thank you once again for contributing immensely. We thank you once again. We finally reached our final segment. We'll now release the FICCI GCCA knowledge paper on circular economy, cement and concrete industry, paving the way. I request Mr. Kaustubh Phadke from GCCA to also join us for this release. And I'll request my team to please bring forward the copy of the FICCI GCCA knowledge paper. I'll also request Dr. Arvind Bodhankar, Dr. Sunil Pandey, Mr. Manoj K. Rustagi to please join us for the release of this knowledge report. Seniors from the cement industry joining us now for this release of the FICCI GCCA knowledge report on circular economy, the cement and concrete industry paving the way. My apologies, Mr. Ulhas Parlikar, if please also join us for this official release. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting to you the FICCI GCCA knowledge paper on circular economy, cement and concrete industry paving the way. We've almost come to an end of the opening session. I'll quickly request all the award recipients to come and join us for a group photograph, as I thank all of our dignitaries for joining us for this opening session. In the interest of time, we will go straight to our next session, requesting very quickly all the winners of the awards to join us for a group photograph along with all of our dignitaries here. We'd like to capture this moment and keep it with us. All of our winners, the award recipients, please feel free to bring in your trophies and join us for a group photograph. And we are not taking any break here. We will go straight to our next session on circular financing and green investment. We apologize for the delay. We've been running a little behind schedule. I'll request the dignitaries may please join us on the dais, and all of our award recipients can step down. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we now close this opening session, but we have more for you. As promised, we now have a panel discussion on circular financing and green investment. I'll request everyone to kindly remain seated. We are not taking a break here in the interest of time, but we promise you ample time and opportunity for networking during the lunch break. For now, I'll request everyone to kindly get settled. I'll request our dignitaries to please join us in the audience now so we can prepare for our next session. And in just a few moments from now, we will begin our next session on circular financing and green investment. Once again, a humble reminder for everyone to kindly keep their phones on a silent mode. Any urgent calls can, of course, be taken outside the auditorium. Requesting everyone to please get settled and allow us a few moments to make the necessary arrangements on the dais, and we will begin in just a very short while from now. So may I have your attention, please? Once again, everybody. We are now starting with our next session on circular financing and green investment. And the circular transformation of our economy will need new and innovative financial instruments and investments for regenerative business models to foster and to grow. Now, it is important to create conducive environment to attract investment and develop understanding for its potential and effective utilization. And in this session, we will be discussing issues and challenges of attracting local and foreign investment, highlight advantages of enhancing circular investments and associated risks, and explore how equipped Indian and global financial sector is to support circular transition across industry segment. Now, to moderate the session, we have amongst us Mr. Hisham Mundol, EDF. Please join us. And I'll also request all of you to please put your hands together and join me in welcoming Ms. Mridula Ramesh, Executive Director, Sundaram Textiles Limited, Founder, Sundaram Climate Institute, Ms. Meeta Narsinghani, Associate Partner at Circulate Capital, and Ms. Namita Vikas, Founder and Managing Director at Octis ESG. Let's welcome all of our panelists here with a big round of applause, everyone. Thank you. And without wasting any time, I am going to hand it over to the session moderator, Mr. Hisham Mondal, to take it forward from here. We also have Ms. Anjana Seshadri joining us for this session.
It's officially afternoon, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for attending this session on circular economy. My name is Hisham Mondal. I'm with the Environmental Defense Fund, and I'm thrilled to have this panel. I'm sorry, a lot of people on social media have been reaching out to me when those posts were out, and they were saying, you know, how come there's an all-women's panel, and isn't that cool? And you know, the snide remarks about the manels, and now I heard about the fanels for the first time. I have to give you one word of reassurance. Not one of them are here because they're women. They're here because they are accomplished in their own rights. They just happen to have women, but give them a round of applause. The format for today is, I'm going to request everyone to introduce themselves, a couple of minutes, you know, who they are, the investment firms, and possibly the investment theses that of their firms. I would love to hear from them a sentence or two on what the strategic value of circular economy is. I wanted to just provide some framing context. So the first thing that I just wanted to say is that circular economy, don't think about circular economy from an NGO perspective. Think about circular economy from a strategic value perspective. The fact that, you know, Mr. Kant was talking about it, the fact that there is G20 communiques around it, the fact that there are so many people who are thinking about this is not just because it is a cute thing to do, it is because it's strategically hugely valuable. Any effort on circular economy basically reduces inefficiency in your enterprise operations. So think about it as extracting value. It also reduces risk. I love the fact that there were so many startups who won on battery recycling. Just think about it. The recycling of lithium allows us to avoid a situation where we replace fossil fuel dependence with critical mineral dependence. That's the game. It's obviously important to recycle the lithium, but it is equally critical to think about where India is going to be 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. We don't have lithium. Resources of lithium are in different countries. They are, quite frankly, controlled now by geographies which are not India's best friend. So we have to think about it much more strategically than that. The second is, don't think of circular economy just as recycling. It's so much more than that. It was wonderful to see that you know, Dalmia Cement won that award, and the narrative there was that there was the use of waste product from other sectors, which is a great part of the story and a very valuable part of the story. But what maybe was not said was there's a huge story that they have on heat efficiency. The amount of energy that is used by Dalmia Cement is significantly lower than cement used in any other parts of the world, and it actually makes India's cement the greenest in the world. So think of circular economy just more than that. The last piece I'll say about circular economy before I pass it to the panels, this isn't about regression back to, you know, 100 years, 200 years, 300 years. We are talking about progress. We're just saying there is a different consumption model that we can have, which is more efficient, but which allows standards of living to improve, but without a linear growth in resources. If you think about where India is right now, per capita, on almost every indicator, we use less resources than the rest of the you know, industrialized world. As we progress, and we should progress, it's not in our interests to, be using the same level of product? Is there a more efficient way of doing it? With that, can I just pass it on to the panel, and maybe we do a right to left? Anjana.
Thank you so much.
I think you need to.
Yeah, thanks so much, Hisham, for that. I mean, that was a very invigorating intro to all of us. I am Anjana, and I head the ESG and impact function at NEEV Fund. Just wanted to introduce NEEV Fund. It is a private equity fund that is focused on climate and environment as a sector. We are backed by a certain global institutions such as the government of UK, the European Investment Bank. So thanks to the colleagues from the European Union here, the JICA, and few Indian institutions. It is backed by the State Bank of India group as well. Our thesis is to make investment into the climate and environment sector and look for newer avenues, investments, innovations that actually are paradigm shifting and can lead India to the zero carbon transition pathway. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Mridula Ramesh. I wear many hats. I was very happy in the corporate sector in the textile world until one fine day we ran out of water, and then started learning about that and got very, very frightened that this was back in 2012-13, that no one was talking about climate change. So started doing two things, writing. That writing journey has now gone to 2 books, and also started investing in 2015. So one little bit of good news here. I'm an angel investor. I do climate tech startups, and when I started, I said, I'm doing climate tech adaptation. So I was very clear in how I wanted to start investing. In 2015, if I got one startup every quarter, it was a great quarter. Last week, I looked at 5. In the next 2 days, I'm going to be meeting over 100. So that tells you the kind of acceleration that is happening. It's very, very good news. And it makes me very happy because I see each of these startups as a vaccination of hope, which is really needed, I think, in today's environment. Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is Namita Vikas, and I am the founder and managing director of Octus ESG. Come with about 30 years of experience in sustainability, finance and investments. Last role as a banker with the 4th largest private sector bank, raised the first green bond in the country, have raised over $1 billion of green capital, deployed that. And now with Octus, we provide strategic advisory to financial institutions on innovative financial solutions towards green, climate, sustainable businesses. Young organization, 2 years, we worked on 12 projects so far with internationally with the governments of the UK, Zimbabwe, Chile. In India, we're working on some very exciting projects on agri financing very innovatively. How do you bring in innovative and different kind of finance for mechanization, micro irrigation, so on and so forth. And yeah, the journey has been really very good, and I'm glad that we are talking about these aspects. There were only a few of us, like I see some, like Arvind and others, that we were talking about these aspects, but we have now, I mean, there's a business case that's turning out to be. Investors, bankers have started to look at these as not just from a risk standpoint, but also from an opportunity standpoint. And we need to bring in scale. So while we're seeing investments coming into the sector, it's just limited to, I mean, if you look at circular economy, it's limited to only about $2 billion US against 624 US dollar requirement that we have in a country like ours. So that's the big opportunity that's in front of us. We need to recalibrate the risks for the sector. And I'm sure we are getting more and more investors to come in and work with companies on their transition plans and on their overall circular economy plans. I agree with Hisham. It's no longer a good to do thing. It's a big business opportunity, and I think we are at a good point to grab it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Meeta Narsinghani, Associate Partner at Circulate Capital. By far, we are just one of the largest in the sector investing in specific solutions. So we are an investment management firm that finances innovations, infrastructure, and companies that scale solutions to the plastic waste and climate change crisis. We have raised 2 funds. We have been in the market since 2019. We are assets under management of $175 million, and we have the largest portfolio in India and Southeast Asia. In India, definitely with 7 companies in the space. We looked at this entire problem across 3 lenses: sourcing, recycling, and digitization. And we've invested since 2019 across 7 companies, as I mentioned. Our latest fund, which is Fund 2, our first fund was Ocean Fund, and we've taken third-party money from a lot of corporates sitting in the room: Coke, Pepsi, Unilever, Danone, P&G, Chanel, Dow Chemicals, and CP Chem, and Mondelez. And we are trying to resolve the problem of providing the best quality of recycled plastic and also the plastic problem at large. Our second fund, we have taken money from DFIs, and we are trying to scale the solutions to the problems, thereby trying to bring better companies, startups, innovations, and even MSMEs, I would say, and provide better solutions in the market.
Thanks. And maybe we start with the first round of questions. I did forget to mention one thing in the beginning, which is we really want to make this as interactive as possible. So at the risk of creating vast amounts of nervousness amongst the co-panelists, let me just ask for some audience points on what do you want us to cover today? What would you find useful? 1 or 2 words. Somebody needs to raise a hand quickly, otherwise we're losing time. Yes, sir. Green climate finance, okay. Anything else?
Project-based risk finance.
Okay.
For the nascently was in the circular economy.
All right. So.
Access to capital for MSME.
Yep.
What is it an investor looks for when investing in a circular economy business?
Gotcha. The lady in specs.
2 things. One, the fund which was, decided in COP27, if we can shed some light on that. And the other thing is youth participation.
In the circular economy. Okay. Right. That's going to be a challenging one, but we'll figure it out. Gentleman on the left. Yes, sir. You, sir, in the tie.
It'd be interesting to cover parametric insurance ideas on the agriculture sector.
Biometric insurance. Sir, I'm going to throw up my hands on that one. All right, excellent. Wow, we have a fantastic panel. Okay. Let me start off, though, with, I think, one of the questions here, which is how do you make the case? When companies or startups come to you, and maybe this is a question for Anjana, how do you look at the business benefit beyond the the obvious environmental and social impacts that are important and good?
So as an investment thesis, the fund that I represent, NE Fund, is a private equity investor. So we take a early position into a company where we would be a minority, but we would also be taking an influential position in order to influence the company in the way they want to grow. And in order to see the circular economy case, we need to establish, we look at climate and environment also as a sector. So we need to look at the impact and the climate rationale that the company has. What is the paradigm shifting potential of the company? Is it just adaptation or mitigation, or is it cross-cutting in nature? One of the companies that was awarded earlier was Punjab Renewables, who are also in the room. They have a solution that is actually cross-cutting across adaptation and mitigation as well, and fitting into the circular economy case as well. Therefore, for us, it is purely commercial as well as looking at how the company can scale up and create deeper impact over a long period of time. We are a catalytic investor, and we are a growth investor. We believe and we back companies that can go ahead and create newer industries and markets. And I take the case in point of Punjab Renewable Energy Systems Private Limited. They are a company into agricultural biomass supply chain. It was an industry that did not exist almost 6-7 years ago. There's a huge problem of the autumnal haze in Delhi and the northern parts of India. And I think almost after Diwali, everybody complains that the air of Delhi is really bad, and they attribute it to the Diwali crackers, but it actually is due to the burning of the agricultural waste in the vicinity or the other neighboring states. So we look at the problem in two ways. One is the commercial aspect of that. We do a diligence on the company to understand if there is a business case to be built, and secondly, the impact potential and the scale-up potential. So that's the paradigm shifting potential of the company.
And just to touch on one point, and this is a theme that you will hear constantly in conversations, the scale-up question. What investors want to hear from startups or enterprises is, A, does it make climate science sense for sure, but is there a potential to scale? And that's a good challenge, and it's not always easy to deliver on it, but what it gives you is a foundation for building a strong business for which you're out there seeking those financing. So just have a think through on that growth story when you're on the scale story. Namita, can I move to you? And we spoke, and I think in the narratives earlier, we spoke about the fact that it was the right thing to do. It delivered benefits, it had business value, it reduced risks. And those are some of the lesser known benefits of circular economy. Could you talk through this risk question? And along with that, does circular economy actually deliver better returns, risk-adjusted returns compared to other investments?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much. Well, of course, there are multiple positive externalities and a clear business case, as we spoke, for adoption of circular economy. However, I think, if you've seen businesses grow, I think market-driven growth is the key, and that's really essential to realize the benefits and creating the financial gains, if I may say. And currently that's not happening at sufficient scale. So that's also leading to somewhere an increased risk perception amongst investors. And I'm saying that while there would be angel or series level investors, I'm talking about how can debt come in, big debt walk in, right? And further let's look at it, the complicated process of remanufacturing, refurbishing designs, high carbon technologies, the lock-in, all this coupled with lack of technological knowledge, or for that matter, the capacity management. I think these serve as critical barriers to circular transformations. And then, there's also a mismatch between circular model cycles and investor horizons. So that impedes really the allocation of more and more funds going into these kind of projects. And then on the other side, we are anyway grappling with lack of standardization, matrix, for circular activities for that matter, or any kind of little or inadequate coordination between the stakeholders, So all these, I think, need a kind of a different navigation through the challenges very proactively. And I think that would really help long-term, kind of financing to come in. Companies have started to feel the pressure to adapt to circular systems. On your question of making, risk-adjusted returns, I think making risk-adjusted capital available is very, very important. So, if you look at circular business models, they have a very different kind of risk and return profile vis-a-vis current or linear businesses, right? Dependencies and legal consequences they also increase when we come to circular kind of models. Therefore, it's important for companies and financiers to take into account the differences in financial modeling. So it's not a simple linear model kind of finance that we look at. And then look at the kind of risks that are there. So very simply, what we've started seeing in the banking sector, for example, is that credit lines are being provided to self-consumption models. So if there is solar panels that are being retrofitted on, say, branches, then financing those ESCOs are being done by financial institutions. I think, we need to bring in those kind of models to embed circularity in the products. And I just want to lastly give you an example from the EU. So this is EU Refiber project that used a combination of several risks and financial analyzing tools to be able to finance a very interesting technology of end-of-life tires, and they achieved significant impacts in terms of getting the capital, bringing down the GHG emissions, and bringing in the whole circularity in the model. So I think we need more of these kind of examples to come forward, and I'm glad that FICCI did this award, examples that need to be shared because there's so much replicability that can be brought in. Thank you. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Just building on that and the need for larger ticket sizes, and the logic for the larger ticket sizes is, 2-3 crore investment in a startup important, but there's only so much that 2 and 3 crores will take you to. For a business to fundamentally rewire itself costs a lot more money, and it will require, those bigger ticket sizes. For transformational science projects to come, I'm so glad that Suhas and his team won. But when you think about it, pyrolysis is a technology which is 20, 30 years old. Surely we need to be, investing more in what we're doing about plastic right now. All of these cost money. And while I'm thrilled, Mridula, that you have 100 conversations, thinking beyond what are investors adequately seeing the opportunity? The ones who are seeing it, what are they getting right? The ones who are not seeing it, what are they missing out on circular investments?
So I think when you talk investment, you're putting the cart before the horse. You put investment, most of us put investment because we see value in it, right? So the value is the horse. And I'm going to completely sidestep your question and not talk about startups at all. Okay? I'm going to talk about corporate investments. And there I'm going to go back to my career as, a person who runs a company. I run an SME. I know there was a question on SME finance. And I run an SME. We are a cotton yarn spinner, right? And well before climate became a thing, and well before all circularity became a thing, we made our profit entirely by managing waste. So every machine would have two waste buckets next to it, usable waste and saleable waste, right? And because we did it at scale, I'd have to say that my company was the best. We are the only ones who did it. That's not true. Every one of us did it. And we did it because without that we would not make any money. And because all of us did it, there were entirely new sectors created. So a lot of European manufacturers came up with wonderful machines to take that waste and spin yarn out of it. And people, I don't know if anyone in this conference is wearing jeans, textile waste goes into that, rupee notes, you name it, it's in there, right? So, but the point I want to make, and pun unintended, this is not a linear process. It's not just value, therefore investment, etc. There's a lot of philanthropists, government agencies, etc., which can seed pilots. So let me give you an idea. About 10 years ago, I think, there was a court case that said, you're not allowed to dump this textile effluent into this thing. So this overnight, the one cluster shut down. But they innovated, right? They came up with taking these garment fabrics. When you cut a shirt, there's a lot of fabric left over. They took those fabrics, segregated by color, and started creating something they called it eco yarn. But it was not done with this thing of becoming eco. It was done with this thing of, I need to not do effluent, so let me do this. That segment has become so popular, it has wiped out the virgin yarn means, made with fresh fiber, virgin yarn in the sector. So what I'd like to say is, when you see value, people like us, we don't see money, so we invest in circular because it's a way of, you're actually wasting resource, right? When you're creating waste, that's less profit. And if you're in a completely competitive industry, that waste should become profit. Right? The second thing is when, I think about 4 years ago, it was a nice to have, right? Circularity was a nice to have. So it existed largely in CSR budgets. Today it's entering the corporate boardrooms and becoming mainstream thing. But let's not, why I brought up this whole eco yarn is, let's not forget the need to sort of innovate wildly. Because when you innovate wildly and you come up with things, you start creating value where there was no value before. If I can have a minute more, this is all where you see value, okay? And I'm going to talk about an enormous sector, and I'm glad that one startup that wanted addresses part of that sector, where circularity doesn't exist anywhere near the scale that we need it, and that is food waste, right? So I'm sure you go out, you go into the kitchen, you'll see food waste, and there are two things I want to talk about here. One thing I want to talk about is well managed, food waste can actually generate biogas. So I'll talk about a startup that I've invested in called Carbon Masters, and they handle 20,000 tons of food and wet waste a year, and they create these pressurized natural gas cylinders which displace LPG. And I think it's of strategic importance to India because biogas. Okay, we are all in the era where Russia is fighting with Ukraine, and gas has become a hugely desired and scarce product. And here you have this technology which can create this, right? And one reason it's not scaling is because we don't have the pilots, the policy, the small experiments that need to happen to understand how policy should be framed at scale. Because before you get to scale, there's all this experimentation. It's not linear. You don't create a policy and get scale. You often experiment, see what you can do. And let me tell you that politically this is a very difficult thing to pass policy on and to implement policy on. So I think you need these pilots to sort of give confidence to every one of the actors present here to move forward. Hope I answered your question.
No, you did. Thanks. And just building on the example on food waste, there's the obvious one about generating methane, but imagine the amount of food waste that goes into our current waste management systems, and they all land up in landfills for the most part, and emit ethane. As you mentioned, there is value that can be extracted from that, and I love the government of India's framing of this whole thing, which is waste to wealth, because there is just so much money that can be made out of it. There's a reason why KKR invests in Ramkey. There's a reason why ERM consultants are continuing to do as well as they're doing, because there's just so much business that is out there. There are some cities that are beginning to make those pilots that you spoke about. I know Indore is doing something. I think Coimbatore has also got some plans going. But just think about this as an idea. Agricultural food waste or food waste in a city goes to a biomethanation plant where you produce fuel with the right degree of chemical composition that can be used for sustainable fuel, airline fuels. Why am I talking airline fuels? I'm talking airline fuels because the airline industry desperately wants to prove its green credentials. The airline industry desperately has a carbon offsets image problem, because they realize when you fly a plane, you're going to emit carbon. You can therefore channel a huge amount of carbon offsets to a project like this, making it financially much more attractive. You can insulate airlines or consumer purchases of this fuel, because your cost structures are much less dependent on what happens in Ukraine or anywhere else. Those are the kind of big ideas that are going to be needed to advance food waste in particular. Mridula, I'm going to I was going to move on to Meeta for a second on financial instruments. For us to construct all of this opportunities are going to require a whole host of finance instruments. I know Arvind spoke about green financing. What is the suite of financial instruments that we should be looking at, that we can be looking at, maybe that we're not looking at enough as an industry? What's the role of blended finance? Is it just green finance that we talk about, or can we get color agnostic finance into this.
So Hisham, I'll give you a live case that Circulate Capital has done since 2019. So we are a plastic, we fund only waste management and plastic recycling companies. And 2019, when we started looking at investing in the sector, we had the building blocks in place. You had, on the regulatory side, you had the Swachh Bharat, which was doing very well. And then you have the EPR, which keeps on changing. You have this whole entrepreneurial network with everybody trying to innovate. We are the best engineers. Reverse engineering is happening. New development is happening, as you rightly said. And then you also have the strong international demand from every FMCG company saying we want recycled granules, and nobody produces them. So 2019, we drew this big hat of ours and we said, okay, let's go to the market. Trust me, going in the market, we found nobody that we could invest in. And we had these small companies, and every company comes and tells us that, you know, we want more money because we want to grow. We want to fund this research. We want to do much more. The sector itself was categorized as infrastructure. And this sector required, in this case, not millions, but billions of dollars. And these are the funds who can give you the money. Then you come back and say, oh, but I'm not getting money. We look deeper. So then there were three main problems that we faced. One, and this is something Circulate Capital faced, and we work with our LPs so closely. There was no pipeline. We went to an investment bank and we said, you know, we want to invest in waste management. He showed me one Ramki, and that was already with KKR. And then there were one or two companies. So I said, that's it. And that was all about it. Second, there's no track record. Now, if you want funds to invest in a company and the sector doesn't have a track record, what do you do about it? And then the third problem was there's no scale. So every time you go to a company and you say, okay, fine, we want to work with you, the regulation is, the company is dependent on regulation. Now, as a foreign investor, or even as, you know, an investor who's trying to make money out of a company, how do these things play out? So then we decided that, okay, let's work with what we have on the landscape. There were two kinds of people that we generally met. One was a family business, second was entrepreneurs. The family business was still with the old mindset, the entrepreneurs were the young blood with new mindset. But capital, as you rightly said, who's going to fund them? The family business gets little capital and then you have to go to raise capital outside. An entrepreneur has to struggle, either get grant or run to a fund. Given this catch-22 situation, how do you work with them? Circulate Capital, we divided the problem statement into three buckets. One was collection, second was recycling, third was digitization. And within these three buckets, we started meeting people. And we found entrepreneurs who had the basic knowledge, but the willingness to do more. And then we gave them a little equity. First round, they started building things. The banks were not giving them money at that point of time. You don't get money from banks. It's 9, 10, 11%. Once a private equity fund comes in, then they start looking at you differently. So my first company was 1,000 tons of processing. Today it has become 30,000 tons. In a span from, I funded them in March 2020, and today they are at 30,000 tons. But now the banks have come in. Now the DFIs are coming in. Now everybody is coming in. The same thing happened with the other company that we worked with, a family business. And they said, you know, we want to do this whole PET recycling, but we don't have the money. And I said, why don't you go to the banks and do this ratio? The bank said, we need equity. He said, I don't have that much money. I mean, these businesses generate 15%, 20% PAT margins. And how much of capex they can put in is limited. So I'm saying that, you know, it's very great to say that, you know, we can do all these kind of finances, but the reality on the ground is that they need the equity support. But more than equity support, what we provided them was ecosystem support. And finance is one bit, But we gave them introduction to our LPs who then helped them develop solutions and even offtake. So it has to be a circular model even in financing, not just the investment that you're making. Today, I can't be just giving money and saying, now come back and come to a board meeting. No, I have to give money, I have to give technology, I have to give network, plus I have to give customers. And if the fund started working this way, we would have a completely different kind of companies that are coming. Our 7 companies, Ace Recycling is one of our investee companies also. All of our companies have grown multifold in the last 3 years. But that is because of this closed loop model which even we follow and just not expect our companies to follow. So capital is going to come in, but I think the risk capital which is there, either through friends and family which leads to higher dilution, or through some funds which can give you that base capital to work with, then you can talk about green bonds. There's one company of mine which is raising in excess of $20 million of debt financing. But that's happened because of the equity capital coming in, governance structures getting cleaned up, everything getting cleaned up in the company. Because they're small companies, they don't even know how much, kind of taxation they have to do. They maintain their books well, but the kind of governance that banks need, DFIs need, private equity needs, it's a lot of work. And I think if we put our heads together and do this with these companies, the MSMEs are not going to be just MSMEs, but they're going to be new age companies and taking care of the circular problems that we are facing.
No, thanks so much, and especially that point about that ecosystem support. And I think part of the challenge is that most banks are not wired to think or respond that way, and it's a bit of outsourcing the work to folks like this, but mercifully somebody is doing it, but we need to do more of it. One of the aspects about circular economy that is sometimes not understood is the risk element of global developments. And I want to talk about textiles because that's a hugely important sector for India. There's millions of jobs in the sector. There's, hundreds of millions of dollars of exports that we make. A lot of it we make to the European Union. Now, the European Union does a lot of really good things, and there was a representative of the European Union, so there we are. And they are leading the front globally on circular economy, which is great. What also sometimes happens is decisions taken by the European Union then begin to have an impact on trade partners of the European Union, and decisions taken by the European Union then are then picked up in various forms by other governments. So it's almost like a catalyst. Now, the European Union is coming up with new requirements around circular economy and the textile sector. If you look at it, some of it could be potentially concerning for India. And Mridula, you were giving those examples from the textile sector. I wanted to ask you, how do you look at where we stand as far as something like this is concerned? Is there something we can do? Should we be doing something?
I'm working on limited knowledge, so please, anyone from the EU, correct me if I'm wrong. I think what I understood, and yesterday I was in a cotton seminar, so we were discussing this, and I think what I understand is there is a stated desire and a legal requirement to increase the amount of circular recycled material within the textile used and make it recyclable as well. Now, that sounds very good, but when you start getting the numbers in, and I'm taking one brand, H&M has put out a policy. I was just checking it to make sure I got it right before saying it here. I think by 2030 they want to go entirely circular. Okay, 100% recycled fibers is what, recycled, not recyclable, recycled fibers is what they said. This bothers me, and I'll tell you why this bothers me, because I see a lot of gentlemen wearing shirts. The shirts can be made with some degree of recycled material, but the kind of cotton that goes into it cannot be entirely recycled, 100% recycled. It can't be 100% recycled yarn going into it. Now last year, and again I just got the numbers before this thing, India exported about $5 billion of cotton textiles to India. Now this supports thousands if not hundreds of thousands of farmers. Now if you're saying, look, this cotton is going to be replaced by some recycled material, and let me tell you that the big textile companies are making those investments to make completely 100% recycled materials. But what do those farmers do? What will that cotton that farmers produce do? Yesterday, and I'm sharing what I heard yesterday also. Yesterday I heard, let them grow other things. If you look at which farmer grows cotton in India, it is the farmer typically without access to irrigation. He grows cotton because he does not have a market for something else. So I think, when you start looking at policies like this, and all of us spinners were huddling around saying, we're not quite sure what to do, especially cotton spinners. There are big mills in India making joint investments and making 100% recycled products. But I have a feeling when you look at SMEs and you look at farmers, etc., you start looking at what is the impact going to be. So I'm going to leave it with a couple of questions that I'm leaving out there. One is, why are we going circular? One is definitely carbon. But as I said, for me adaptation is also equally important. And when I look at adaptation, farmer livelihoods also becomes very important. So I think when we're in the early stages, and we're still in the early stages of circularity, I would say, I think it's very important to co-create some of this, the path at which we are going to jointly work on. I think this is a relationship that we are jointly on together, and I think there needs to be discussion, both ways, informing, piloting, trying different things, etc. So we as a whole achieve a greater, we go to a better place, if I can just leave it there. And I think we need to very clearly, again, yesterday there was a question on what is sustainability. And I think a lot of people have asked that question, what is sustainability? I think it's good to define that. The last thing I want to say is this, and I'll leave this here. This is US data, it's not EU data. A t-shirt that's a cotton t-shirt that sold for $10 in 1991 sold for about $9 and change in 2021. Right? This is a sector that has seen tremendous price decreases over time as value chains in the world have shifted with cost as the primary angle. And I've attended I've been a panelist on so many sustainable textiles things when people say sustainability is important but cost is really important. I think there needs to be a recognition, and I go back to the SME thing, that in the initial stages of becoming circular or becoming more sustainable, there is a cost. And SMEs and a lot of players don't have access to capital, right, to experiment and get that cost. And that has to be shared at some point. Of course, as you move down the cost curve, there will be benefit overall in the value chain, but I think that recognition needs to be there. I think if these three things happen, like, you work together and you define what sustainability is, and you realize, there is a cost and that cost needs to be shared, I'm very hopeful about the future.
Yeah, I'd asked the example, and I realized it was a deliberately provocative example on the cotton sector because it points, so the good thing is that the regulations are still being worked through and developed. So there is still the space for conversation. And I think it's essential for the Indian government to weigh in with our European partners. It's essential for industry bodies like FICCI to, represent Indian industry with our friends from Europe. I want to move on from cotton into something else, which is, if you take the example of steel, the steel industry will tell you, yes, we want more, we want incentives and we want demand aggregation for green steel. Steel consumers will say, yes, we are willing to buy green steel and, we need these kind of, benefits or whatever. Everyone wants that bit of it, but obviously, and it's natural instinct, nobody wants it to be mandated anytime soon. The reason why this textile example is critical is that sometimes the mandates might land up on us outside of our control. They may come from international forces. Today it's textile, tomorrow it's steel, day after it could be just about anything else. And Anjana, I was going to ask you, when you think about your portfolio and you think about the companies that you're investing in, how are you thinking about some of these risks which are, quite frankly, not directly in our control at all?
Sure. So there was a time that we would look at environmental impacts and climate impacts more as a physical risk, and we would plan to set that off in our portfolio and put together a portfolio of investments that actually target climate adaptation or mitigation or cross-cutting themes as one of the solutions to that. But the last 3 years, like black swan events such as COVID and now recently, the Ukraine war that is happening, there have been a lot of macroeconomic shifts that have led to fluctuating prices. We work on a sector on alternative energy as well. We've made a few investments in the alternative energy sector, and that sector is very closely linked to the price movements in the EU and the US, especially the crude and the natural gas prices. We've recently made an investment in green hydrogen, and while making that investment, we were constantly tracking the price of the natural gas, and there was a time where when we were doing our modeling, we realized that the price is just under what the price of the natural gas currently is, and the team who was working on the deal kept telling us that that there will be a point that the prices will decrease because the war situation will go away, and at that time maybe the green hydrogen may not be so profitable as a business to get into. Still we went ahead and we made that investment because we think that there is a requirement in India to create a localized supply chain. There is a great supply chain risk that's there if we rely completely on material and especially on energy that is outsourced. That's why we built that thesis and we went ahead and we made that investment. We've also been tracking other commodities. We've tracked lithium. The EV story is great. There are a lot of VCs, private equity, waiting to invest into EV. There's like almost one EV deal a day that we see. We are also tracking the alternate metal battery segment. We think that India already is in surplus of a lot of other metallic batteries or metallic elements that can be used for battery manufacturing, and we've been supporting that innovation as well, and it's still in the works, but we think there is a case to be made. So indigenizing supply chains in order to suit India's needs is also something that we need to look at when we look at any kind of a transitional risk that could come to us from macroeconomic shifts.
And just on that indigenizing supply chains part of it, there are two components. And one is what can help you cost engineer for India's requirements. So just think about the COVID vaccine. It costs the Indian government $3 a vaccine. It costs the US government $15 a vaccine. Same vaccine, same efficacy, etc. And part of it is just because of the inherent efficiency or otherwise of one country versus another. I want to stick to the US example for something else on the indigenization point. Recently, the US passed a big climate bill. The Inflation Reduction Act is what they call it. It's a really important bill. It's great that the US did it. They're putting a lot of money behind climate change. Excellent, all good. However, if you step back a moment, one of the things that you will realize that it is hundreds of billions of dollars ring-fenced on make in America, buy in America, spend in America. Now, obviously, the US will do that. Biden is not going to be able to sell a bill like that without that component of it. But what it tells you is that climate action is increasingly getting protectionist, and therefore your point about green hydrogen is so critical. We have to find ways of developing it ourselves. It's great to see hydrogen producers or potential hydrogen producers in India saying, let's bring down those costs from $4 to $1, or what? And where is that effort going to come from? It's going to come in India, not anywhere else. Because, for example, right now, that same US bill I talked to you about, it subsidizes hydrogen consumption $3 to the kilo. If I'm sitting in the US, what is my incentive to find ways of producing $1 hydrogen if the US government is already giving me $3? And some people can actually end up making money on hydrogen. This is all doomsday. We need to end on positive notes. I'm going to take it on to Namita and Meeta. Namita, tell us, what are the things that you're seeing on circular economy that excite you? What organizations, what trends, what investment opportunities?
Thanks. I just want to address one of the earlier points that you spoke about in the context that we are speaking here. And, there are pressures, and why should this be a business case? I'm just coming back to that from the points that we made. I mean, just look at the EU's carbon border adjustment mechanism, right? I mean, that's going to levy a kind of a tax on all those who export to the EU. And today in the voluntary carbon market, per ton of carbon is at about $140 per ton of carbon, right? So just look at the impact that that's going to have on the balance sheet of the, those who are doing business in those markets across sectors. So I think that's very important as to why we need to therefore address this. As far as opportunities or the trends are concerned, I think we are seeing large companies more and more looking at circularity. One, because they have the resources, they have the wherewithal, they have the finance, they have the mechanisms. I think the opportunity is sitting within the supply chains. And there are, like I have worked, for example, in the agri sector to do financial structuring with a large manufacturer of drip irrigation. I'm just giving an example here, and structured a financial product as to how can his supply chain of 1,000 farmers get financing, because a bank wouldn't go and finance 1,000 farmers, but on the back of this large manufacturer, how do you get in financing, right? So I think mechanisms need to evolve. You spoke about blended finance. I think blended finance is becoming more and more popular. It's playing that catalytic role, because yes, we do need those credit enhancements. We need the guarantees. We need that that to kick off. I think we need that support. And the de-risking mechanisms we've seen to be quite popular in the renewable energy sector. We're seeing that with EVs now. And I would think that more and more policies we need to look at from how do we bring in de-risking mechanisms for circularity. So for example, India is going to issue the sovereign green bond, right? I mean, we have the framework, we have clarity in terms of what's going to be falling under that criteria. I think that's an opportunity to look at how can some of that capital go towards circular kind of models. I would like to talk about, also sustainability linked bonds or transition bonds. While the market is not as huge as conventional green bonds, but that is also, in a way, direction to the newer instruments that are being looked at, and I just want to cite an example here. 500 million euro climate action bond that was raised by an Italian gas company in 2019, Sanam, and this is funding mainly biomethane generated from the agriculture biomass. So we're looking at much innovation in terms of how capital is going towards these. And we know in India there was a 10-year dollar-denominated issuance that was done by a cement company, and first of its kind, which was linked to sustainability targets. So I think we need financiers to look at different kinds of mechanisms, different kinds of financial structuring, very innovative. I mean, when we talk about green tagging within the banking sector, we're looking at tagging sectors which are green, obviously green. But I think there could be so many that are sitting within financial institutions which are not being mapped, and therefore I think taking targets, doing the green tagging, and then being able to develop innovative structures to mobilize capital or to channelize the capital. I think those are some of the opportunities that are sitting in front of us. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Meeta, Mr. Kant spoke about India's G20 presidency that started, and it's clear that circular economy is going to be a big component of the agenda. The good thing is that we've been doing a lot of circular economy things without ever calling it that. So now it's time to claim back the brand. But more seriously, if you had a wish list for what you'd like the Indian government to do, or what you'd like the G20 to consider from an investor's point of view, what would it be?
So Hisham, that's the first thing that came to me when you asked this question. Was today in the morning when Mr. Amitabh Kant opened his speech, I was pretty impressed with what he was saying. I think when you talk about circular economy, it's such a large bucket. You don't even know what goes in. I think first thing is to sit down and understand what are the sectors in circular economy. And every sector is there. So plastic recycling as a sector is there, you have EVs there. But within these sectors, you have to understand that they need financing. So, or they need governance, or they need government support to do things. Something as simple as plastic recycling has been for ages around. In fact, India is the only country where we have 95% collection of our PET bottles, and 85% is reused. I think it's downcycled, as we call it. So my wish list is, first, as an investor, I would love to see categorization within circular economy, what is coming. Within that, various sectors. And within the sectors, have a playbook, which is give priority sector status to some segments. Because only when you do that, do the bank financing kicks in. A lot of equity even gets raised easy. And that is a confidence building exercise that you're going to have at least in the first bit. Because now companies are going to be talking not as infrastructure with the 70-30 ratio, which is abundantly known, but a very different kind of, approach across. So that's one. Second is, if you're looking at each sector differently, today we spoke about EPR, digitization. That's a brilliant move that happened this year. But ease of pain that every company goes through in implementation. Because today, if you're moving from one standard to the other, it's going to be a problem. So before implementing something, I think having a framework in place that works and having systems and processes that work is more important. So everything that's coming in could be done and it should be done, but the industry can't have the pain points. Like companies can't be waiting for their applications of EPR getting on the CPCB portal because they are losing revenue, and some of these can go out of business very soon if they don't realize revenue in a certain number of days. So I think alignment of industry with the government, sitting down with industry players, asking them, talking to them and seeing how this is implemented would be very critical for me. And every player in this industry has a certain role to play. I think getting them together on a single platform, that is where I think we should end at today. Because if we all come together and discuss industry-wise platforms, things can get even more streamlined. And that is where, as an investor, gives me so much confidence to invest. So I'm not basing my investment on regulation, but I'm basing my investment on the fact that this is a requirement of sustainability. The company is going to offtake it, the government is going to support it, the banks are going to lend, and my equity that I'm putting in today is going to make the return that I have promised my investors, and that gives me more capital to bring in the sector. And I think that is where the whole role play goes for me.
Thanks a lot for that, and I agree with you in terms of it was inspiring to hear how he was thinking through it, and it's obviously not something that he's thinking about today. He's been thinking about it for a long while. On all things circular economy as well as broadly on climate tech, right now, if you think about what's the way that the government is trying to promote it, production-linked incentives exist, but they don't necessarily give you a benefit or additional benefit for circular economy investments. priority sector lending does not allow for bias towards circular economy, and as a result of things like this, what you end up happening is virgin plastic remains cheaper than recycled plastic. The Indian steel sector is unable to use as much of scrap steel as it should be because it's not able to access it because the economics aren't working out. So if the government were to think about the levers that are there, priority sector lending, PLIs, maybe even research-linked incentives to promote the investments that companies need to make. And wouldn't it be amazing if you have, GST free on recycled product? So that's the last of the questions that we had. I know we are running out of time. I'm going to just ask for one question to be answered, which is the biometric insurance for agriculture, because that seems so specific and fascinating. And you had volunteered.
More than one of the startups that I'm doing, what they're doing is they're putting sensors into different farm acres. And the biggest problem of insurance in agriculture, and my knowledge is limited, so I'm happy to ask for outside commentary also, is that weather varies within a district itself quite substantially. So available weather data, it's not great quality, but it's available at the district level, but any loss, etc. that happens at a much smaller granular level. So this startup, what they're doing, and there are others also in this space, they're putting sensors in the different acres itself. That gives data which is trackable over time, which is, so the insurance providers also have a much more granular and, long-term understanding of what are the risks faced and able to deliver better products. I hope that answers your question.
And just on the youth question, just be an active consumer. Every corporate is listening to consumers. They want to know, where their heads are. When Zomato makes that commitment recently to, offset all of their plastics, it's one because it's the right thing to do for them. It's also because that's what their consumers are saying. So, engage with corporates. They're listening. They want to hear from you folks. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, with that we conclude this session. We'd like to, of course, thank our panelists here and our session moderator for those valuable insights. And with that, we'll now proceed to our next session, which is a deep dive session once again on circularity in the cement industry.